Welcome to Bunch Formation, the newest college football podcast. My name is Chris Vannini. I had 18 dogs in my house last night. He's David Ubben.
Chris, I think are you Cruella DeVille? What's going on here?
So we're fine. Everything's fine. My wife is actually now up in Oklahoma City at a dog trial. She took several dogs that we don't own to go be part of the show and do some stuff. We also have the litter of 5 puppies in the other room. They haven't made enough noise yet to appear on the podcast. I should try to get one at some point and bring it on the YouTube part of the show, but we're good. It was a lot going on last night, but
I got to be honest, I didn't hear anything you said after you said dog trial because I was envisioning like a judge and like a cat jury of some kind. I don't know what the dog's on. I don't know what the dog is charged with doing, but I would watch a show that's just dog trials. Did you steal my daughter's animal crackers? And if so, then you have a sentence of 10 to 15 minutes in the crate in the garage. Yeah. I like this dog trial.
Okay. Make it like People's Court or something.
Yeah, I'm into it.
We got a really fun show here. Mike Defee, Beef Ref, as you may know him, former college football referee with the Big 12, now the coordinator of officials with the Mountain West and Conference USA, is here. We have a great conversation with him. Used a lot of listener questions on what it's like to be a referee, and we kind of used this interview to kind of learn what it's like and help fans kind of understand everything that goes into it, because we know fans don't like referees. That's part of the job. They know they sign up for that. But like, what is the job on a day-to-day basis? So that'll be a really good conversation.
We did yell at him for a long time and got very personal at the end. So if you're into that kind of thing, stick around for that as well. He cried. It was good. It was good.
We didn't compare bicep sizes, but I'm wondering if we should have.
Maybe, yeah.
But again, please subscribe to the show on wherever you get podcasts. YouTube, we're doing a lot of the video stuff there as well. Getting a lot of video game reaction stuff on that. That is ongoing. Bunchformationpod@gmail.com for all the feedback. Also, Bunch Formation on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, everything. And if you give us a 5-star review, we will read it on the show. We got another one from iWin21, who says, as a longtime reader of both Chris and David's writing, I'm very glad they have continued with a new podcast. Their ability to break down the complex world of college football in a way that is both informative and approachable is refreshing. They bring clarity to the chaos of the sport, offering logical, well-reasoned insights that are easy to understand. They have a deep understanding of the fan's perspective. I often find myself nodding along with their takes. If you're a college football fan looking for a smart, grounded analysis, take a listen. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
That was a lot of words for the exact type of thing we're trying to do. So appreciate everybody who's reached out about the show. We're 11, 12 episodes into this thing. It's great getting the DMs from people who say, glad to hear us again. Again, we started this back up without the Athletic. It's just us. So we've been having a lot of fun trying to get some fun interviews like the one you will see and hear later on in the show. But first, quick news segment, a couple of things to hit on really quickly. We call that the media scrum.
That's why I don't read the newspaper, because it's garbage.
First up, the Pac-12 has part of its TV deal done. CBS will be the primary anchor broadcaster. They will do the Pac-12 football championship game, the men's basketball championship game, couple of games, at least 3 football, men's basketball. The rest of the TV deal still being worked out. Expansion also still being worked out. But keep an eye on July 1st. That is the date, kind of the new academic calendar. That's when a lot of the exit fees to leave a conference are going to go up. So a lot of these prospective schools that are talking to the Pac-12, they kind of need to get it done by July 1st. As we've reported here and elsewhere, Texas State is the favorite right now, but it's not yet a done deal as of recording. Dave, any thoughts on this?
I mean, I think it's a pretty good TV deal. I just think that every conference, I think this is an issue for the Big 12. Every conference right now should do the best that they can to get as many of their games on, not just over the air, but just on cable. I still think we're not quite there with streaming. And when you have games on ESPN Plus, I think the fewer games that somebody has to click 6 times to get to, will be better for your conference. So even if you're on the CW, which I actually thought they did a pretty good job with their ACC broadcasts, or SSN, whatever that looks like, if I can turn on my TV and get to you in 2 clicks versus opening up an app and going into Hulu and doing all this stuff and having to access it or go to your website, that's what every conference from, the SEC should do everything they can to keep their games off of ESPN Plus. I think the Big 12 should do what they can to get their games back on broadcast, whatever that looks like, because we're not there yet streaming. So I like this move from the Pac-12.
Yeah, the fact that I don't think it's going maybe quite as well as Pac-12 people had hoped. The fact that they couldn't announce the whole deal now, the fact that we're in late June now, they wanted to get this done earlier. But over the next week, don't be surprised if there's some realignment news, and we'll talk about that if that happens. Elsewhere, speaking of potential realignment, Sacramento State, their waiver request to move up from FCS to FBS without a conference invitation was denied by the D1 Council. That was expected after the oversight committee also denied them. Basically, to move up from FCS, you need a conference invitation. That's what Delaware is getting, Jacksonville State got, James Madison got. It's the normal process. Liberty didn't get it in 2017 because conferences and presidents didn't want to be associated with Liberty and its then president at that time for various political, religious reasons, what have you. But Liberty had so much money, great facilities. Everybody said, all right, Liberty's like, they can move up and be an independent. Now they're conference.
They've been fine on the field.
Sacramento State does not have that. They're still trying to push. The AD, the president, is still saying we're preparing to be FBS. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to the Mountain West and Pac-12 and just pitch them again and try, because it's their only option at this point. We'll see. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I mean, Sacramento State is super interesting. And what actual money versus pledges of money means and how far that can get you. And what if you need to redirect some of these NIL pledges to replace TV money? These are all interesting questions that I suspect we may have to answer soon. But Sac State is determined, and I think we're seeing how far determination can get you, and they have a clear vision for what they want to be. There's obviously a lot of skepticism around them. I find them interesting. I think other people should as well.
They're trying, and they're being very open about it. I think maybe too open. It's probably turned some people off in terms of the people who make these decisions, but we'll see if it happens. And lastly, Xavier Lucas, the former Wisconsin, now Miami defensive back who transferred without going into the portal. Wisconsin has now sued Miami over this. Basically, I think it's like tortious contract interference because he had a 2-year NIL contract with Wisconsin. Too early to say which way it's going to go. Don't need to get into the specifics other than to say, keep an eye on this, because this may end up being a really big deal for a few reasons. One, depending on the ruling, it could open up tampering to basically be like, all right, the NCAA can't enforce tampering. Everybody can tamper all you want. You can talk to whoever during the season. Doesn't matter. Or a ruling could go the other way and say, no, you can't actually tamper. And this really is going to crack down on it. It could mean...
Well, I think you just have to get better at tampering if they're going to crack down on it.
Also, NIL contracts. Can kids get out of those easier, or do they have to be stuck to those? We could see. And also, does a transfer portal window even matter? Because remember, Wisconsin wouldn't put Lucas into the portal. So he unenrolled at Wisconsin, enrolled at Miami in January as a normal student, and he's been practicing with the team. So if anybody can do that, then there's no portal window. So all this talk about having a single portal window, whatever, that goes out the window. So
that's the most important part of this, I think. Yeah. The tampering thing is whatever, because I think you can just get better at tampering and be much more subtle about it. But the portal windows, I mean, that's a pretty clear precedent. And we spent so much time and energy in the last couple years where the coaches are talking about it. The rules officials are talking about, hey, what makes sense? How can we do this? 2 windows, 1 window. The world's just one big portal window if you set this precedent, which is really interesting. Now, I do think that might make it so that you have a lot more impetus to get to a place where you have employment contracts, where you have collectively bargained contracts that say, we can't have this. We can't have no portal windows. We can't have people leaving, because at that point, then it really does get dumb. If you're week 2 of camp and you're seeing, well, I'm falling down the depth chart, I'm going to leave and go somewhere else. That's
which is what
obviously
happened. Remember,
Yes.
when the portal happened, that's what was happening. Then they
Yes.
created the 2 portal windows,
Yes.
and now they want to make it 1. But
You can't
is
have
that-
the portal
is
being
that
open
enforceable?
all year round. It doesn't make sense. You can't operate a sport that way. So in some ways, I think if they win this case and that comes to fruition, I think that puts the sport on a fast track to employment contracts that are collectively bargained, where I think the sport gets to a better place. But
Or it just makes your current situation more enforceable.
it's going to make the current situation worse, but I think it makes
No,
it
I don't
more.
think-
It definitely makes the current situation worse, but I think it makes everyone involved more motivated to get to a collectively bargained space
Yeah.
where I think everybody knows we have to get there, but there's still people like, well, we don't want to be employees. Really? It's like, well, you can call it whatever you want, but we need to have 2 sides collectively bargaining to get to anything that makes sense. And I think that puts you on the fast track if they win here.
Yeah, so we'll see about that. And last bit of news, actual last bit of news. Thomas Castellanos, quarterback at Florida State, formerly of Boston College, I think formerly of UCF, talked to On Three's Pete Nakos and had some quite interesting things to say
It's
about
wild. We don't see stuff like this very often.
Alabama, his first opponent, in Boston College in general. Dave, I'll let you take it away. Read the quotes first.
Yes. So our guy, Thomas Castellanos, says, I'm excited, man. People don't, I don't know if they know, but you go back and watch every first game that I played in. We always start fast. We need to go back and see who they were playing in some of these first games. Because if it's like it's an FCS team, I'm not counting that. Anyway, I dreamed of moments like this. I dreamed of playing against Alabama. They don't have Nick Saban to save them. I just don't see them stopping me. We'll get to the other stuff in a second. Why, Chris? What do we do? What are we doing? Like, again, I'm okay with you saying it. You can say whatever you want to say. But Thomas Castellanos was last seen being benched at Boston College, literally quitting the team, leaving, going to Florida State. Florida State has kind of put all their eggs in the Castellanos basket. He's got a lot to prove. It's not like he was, like a Darian Mensah situation where, okay, maybe not the greatest portal, haul of quarterbacks, but he was one of the best guys. And we're coming in here. It's like your stock was very much down when you went to Florida State. I don't get why we're coming out of the gates. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, Chris.
You remember leading into the Alabama-Washington playoff game, Holly Rowe tweeted pictures of motivational quotes or bulletin board material that Alabama had put in the locker room, and they were completely fake quotes that said that cited national media essentially.
Yes.
So you don't need that here. You got him just giving it to you. So as always, be interesting. This is interesting. Do I think it's unwise? Sure. Do I think it's a weird spot to say it with Florida State coming off a 2-10 season? Yes. But you know what? It's better than saying, just like Diego Pavia, which we talked about, like you maybe direct it in a different direction, but I appreciate the confidence. But I actually have more problem with the second quote.
Yeah, the second quote. I feel like I tore the ACC up by my damn self for the last 2 years, and now I'm with a squad. I hope people don't think that Florida State is going to be the same team it was last year because we have weapons. People can't just sit back in zone coverage and watch me. Chris, how much would you pay to be in the Boston College locker room for a dramatic reading of these quotes?
I thought I saw a BC player on Twitter. I couldn't
remember his name, but he said something to the effect of, that's not how I remember it going down.
Yeah. Basically, like, kind of laughed it off. Again, he got benched for Grayson James and quit the team during the season. So he did not tear up the ACC by himself. But again,
I'll give him good. He was pretty good.
He was pretty good sometimes. They beat Florida.
Yes.
They beat Florida State. They beat Michigan State late, but he wasn't great in that game, I don't think.
Yeah. I think Thomas Castellanos is like a pretty good player. And like when Florida State got him, I was like, all right, well, I mean, for better or worse, it's probably an upgrade from a year ago.
I appreciate the confidence. Gives us something to talk about. I wish more players would talk like this. Do I think he's right? Not necessarily, but is what that is. So we just wanted to highlight another player talking. I hope we get
times, man.
We need to get back to players who are way too cocky and overconfident. Like, that's fun. That's good.
It is.
Don't.
How do do you think Bill O'Brien probably felt when he saw some of this?
How do you think Mike Norvell thought when he
I'm
saw
more
this?
I'm more interested in Bill O'Brien. I feel like if I'm Bill O'Brien, I feel like the second I'm seeing this, I'm like kicking down the door to the weight room and being like, getting on the PA system and being like, "Hey guys, let me read you something." That's if I'm Bill O'Brien, that's probably what I'm doing. That might be why I'm not a college coach, but I'd be, there's probably an approach where he doesn't have to talk about it. He knows, but maybe you save this for your Friday walkthrough. I don't know where that game is being played. But
they don't play this year. They don't. BC and Florida State do not play this year. That is a real shame. I'm just looking that up. So anyway, that was fun. But let's get into the main event now. Again, we got Mike Defee, longtime Big 12 referee, coordinator of officials now, beef ref. I wrote a story in The Athletic a week or two ago at this point about college football officiating. Is it getting worse or is it getting better? The people involved say it's as good as it's ever been. Fans don't think so. Had a lot of high profile situations last year. The garbage thrown on the field at Texas, Georgia, the non-targeting call in the Arizona State Texas game. Yet a replay official, the Sun Belt, just straight up got a game-winning touchdown wrong. Like, we had a lot of high profile incidents. I talked to Mike for that story. I talked to a lot of people involved for that story. But I like Mike because he's always a straight shooter. He just gets to the point. I've spent time with him at officiating clinics, sometimes here around Dallas. They've invited me to just like come see what everything that goes into this. And I find it interesting. I did a story in The Athletic, I think last year, the test that officials have to take and pass in order to be an official that year. I'll link to it in the show notes as well if you want to take the quiz. I think we use 10 questions, but a lot of work goes into being a ref, and you may not think they're good, but I think you'll find this conversation interesting. So
I think so. The thing I've noticed about officiating is every conference's fans are convinced that their conference has the worst officials. Yes. And I will say, I watch a lot of college football. I watch every league. I don't see an appreciable difference in the conference officiating. Maybe you disagree. It all is kind of the same to me, which I think maybe speaks to the job that they're not. Everyone wants to complain about officiating. There are certainly calls to qualm with all of those things. But even when it comes to the accountability part of that, we talked about that with Mike, and he had some interesting answers for sure.
Yes, and notable in that story, linked in the show notes, broke some news that the commissioners have discussed using a blended crew of officials for the national championship game and the semifinal, basically best of the best from different conferences, rather than using a specific conference crew, in part because of that perception. Oh, we have ACC refs, therefore blank. Nobody ever said, like, when somebody says there's a Big Ten crew, an ACC crew for this game, it's never said in a positive light. Nobody ever says, oh, okay, things are going to be good. Because everybody thinks their officials are bad. So anyway, that's a long build up. Let's get to Mike Defee joining bunch formation, part of the bunch. Let's take a listen. And we are now happy to welcome to the show Mike Defee, the coordinator of officials for the Mountain West and Conference USA, former Big 12 head referee. He's been doing this for a long time. You might know him as Beef Ref if you saw him on TV back in the day with the big muscles. We'll get into that name in a minute. But Mike, I appreciate you being here. You and I have talked a few times. You've let me sit in on some clinics that you guys run. I've always found it interesting what you guys do, and thanks for joining the show. Welcome to the bunch.
Well, appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk to you guys. I always enjoy visiting with the media that covers our game and helps us try to get the right information out to the fans and public, about the big picture, not just the play on the field, the third team out there, the officiating team. So appreciate the work that y'all do.
Mm-hmm. Mike, I think from my perspective, looking at officials, you're getting screamed at all the time. The travel is a little bit difficult from time to time. It seems like a thankless job from my perspective. What made you want to be a referee initially and made you want to keep going and keep working and keep doing this?
Well, first of all, you have to have a passion for the game. I think every official that does this loves the game of football. And almost every one of us starts the same way, and it starts with high school football. So when I got into it, all I wanted to be was the best Texas high school football official that I could be. And I was that typical fan. I watched a ton of football from college to high school to NFL, and I thought I had a tremendous amount of knowledge. And when I started officiating, it became real apparent how deficient my knowledge was. So I started going to camps and clinics trying to be better because I didn't want to cost anyone a game because of my incompetence. And that journey of trying to be a better football official ended up leading me to college football because I had no vision or dream to get to college football. I was just trying to be a good high school official. And by going to these camps and clinics, I got noticed, and that's kind of how the journey began. I ended up in the Southland Conference, and then Tim Millis hired me in the Big 12, and then he retired. I actually never got to work for Tim. Tim hired me in January 2006, and by that spring, he took the job with NFLRA, and Walt Anderson took over, and I worked Walt's entire time in the Big 12, and then the last 3 years or so with Greg Burks, who was the coordinator at that time. So it's a passion for the game, to answer your question. And you're right, it is thankless. There's a lot of baggage that comes with it. You know, the barrage of things now, especially as social media has grown, can be, if you allow it to be, it can be really oppressive. I used to tell guys when I was in the referee in the Big 12, there were referees there that had, it would bother them. They go read these comments. And I said, why do you do that? Why do you even read that? They're always going to be that way. And so I never paid any attention to any of that. I was there to do my job, and I was there to please the person I worked for. It's like having a regular job, right? You're the boss. You try to figure out what does the boss want, and you give them to him. You give that to them. So that was our job, and that is our job as football officials, is to, you know, be better at our craft, be consistent in what we do, and make sure that our performance meets or exceeds the standards that are set forth in college football. So that's the journey.
Mike, you told me once that Judge Mills Lane was your referee idol. The boxing guy. He was in Celebrity Deathmatch back in the day. He was a judge. Like that. That's kind of what you kind of molded yourself wanting to be, right?
I did. I was an amateur boxer, and he was, but what drew me to Mills was the way he handled a fight. He was always in charge. He was a smaller guy, but there was never ever a moment in any fight that he ever had where you didn't think that he had full control. But he did it in the most unobtrusive way. You know, he had always started. He'd go see the fighters in their dressing rooms, and he'd give them instructions, and he talked to them. And the one thing that he always told the two fighters when they came to the center of the ring, he would look them both in the eye and say, "Remember this: I'm fair, but I'm firm. Obey my commands at all times, and you know, let's get it on." But when he said, "I'm fair, but I'm firm," you knew he meant exactly what he said. And fighters respected him. And when you establish control the way he did, it allows you to be less intrusive in the fight because they know you're not going to be allowed to do some of these roughhouse tactics or you know, push things beyond the envelope. So we always try to do that in football. You know, to translate that in, you know, the one thing I always worked with my crew on was game control early on. And this was the thing that I always told my crew. One of the last things I ever told my crew before we walked out onto the field is, if players get out of line, step on their neck and keep stepping on them until they quit. It was our job to make sure that we established what we were going to allow early on, because once we got control of the game early on, if we had to, then they would adjust to us and we could back away. Once they understood how we were calling the game, we could back away and let them play football. And because that was the important thing, is I didn't want to be out there having to make a lot of calls late in the game that we could have taken care of early on. So it was always my approach to make sure that we established what we were going to allow early so that the game could naturally progress. And, you know, we wanted to be as minimally invasive in the game as we possibly could be.
Yeah. What's the hardest part about your job, about being an official?
What's the hardest part? Oh man, there's so many facets to that. Is, number one, what you're wanting to do is make sure your goal is to get to the end of the game, and they're not talking about officiating. You want the two teams to be able to play to conclusion. And hey, look, our job is to make tough calls if that's what's warranted. Okay, but the most important thing is that when you make those tough calls in the critical times of the game, and we get much more focus and scrutiny in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game, but it happens, some of these impact plays can be early in the game, but you want to be right. And then we get into the latter part of the game. That's the most critical time of the game, is that if you're going to make a call, we need to be right, period. And so the pressure of getting those things right today, especially with as much money as there is on the line, our job is to focus. And that's the key word in officiating. It is one play at a time. And I used to tell my crew, and I still use this phrase, win the play. What does win the play look like? It is 10 people, including replay, doing their job one play at a time. Every single person, just like a football team, has an individual job to do. And if we all do our job, all 10 people do their job for a play, that we win that play. And then we go to the next one. It's like an abacus. We've got to do that 175 times in a row. And if we do that, are we going to be perfect? No. But if we do that, we're going to be very, very good. We're going to meet the standard of excellence. And then we walk off field, and that's where satisfaction in officiating comes from. It's not during the game. It's when you walk in the locker room after the game and you've delivered a quality effort and you had a positive effect in the game, and that you didn't affect the game negatively one way or another. You went out and adjudicated the game to the best of your ability, and you did a quality job. That's where satisfaction in officiating comes from.
Is there a certain play in football that is the hardest to officiate? Like, was there, I don't know if it was you and I or me and somebody else talked about kind of the wide receiver defensive back tussling with sometimes, or grabbing the belt or something like that. Was there a play when you were out there that was like really difficult to officiate?
The hardest part to officiate in the game is the kicking game. Pass interference. I was a back judge before I became a referee, and I found that to be, I don't want to say fairly simple. It could be complicated, but you have to train yourself. You have to have elite use of your eyes. You have to recognize things before they happen, indicators that may potentially become a foul. Now, you can't assume that foul is going to occur, but you have to be prepared. There are always indicators that are going to tell you whether you're a deep official and the receiver has gotten an advantage, or the defensive player now is in a bad position off of a double move and he's got to reach out and grab. You can see those things coming, just like on an offensive defensive line. If a defensive lineman makes a really good hard inside move, the offensive lineman was not prepared for it, and all of a sudden he splits that gap. Now he's in a bad position, do something to overcome it. Doesn't mean he's going to foul, but there's a high likelihood of a foul coming. So you have to identify all of those things, and you have to see it in tremendous detail, because we got one shot at it. And that's where all of the things that you do, your focus and your pre-snap routine and your reads, have to be right. And if you do that, it's going to end up leading you in the correct decision. And so just because we have a flag on a play, we're making many decisions out there that the public really doesn't count, So it may be at the end of the day, I average 2 fouls a game across 12 games, and I've got 24 fouls. Do you have any idea how many calls I passed on and how many judgments I made that were not fouls, that were very close to being fouls? Every one of those are as important as the ones that we do make. So you have to stick with the process, and it's very much a process of everything that you do, every play, every game. And if you do that, you're going to perform at a high level. But to answer your question, the kicking game is the hardest part of the game, because there's so much chaos going on. It's not like it's just spread out all over the field. And so you have to have tremendous discipline in the kicking game. And I always preach to my crews, if you want to separate yourself from other crews, be great in the kicking game. And so there's a lot of keys to being great in the kicking game. And I could go through this. It would probably take us 5 minutes for me to break down one play. about how to be excellent on a punt play and how we mechanically have to work that to be excellent, because they are chaotic, and you have to be tremendously disciplined to work those good.
You mentioned the scrutiny and social media and all those things, and obviously trying to stay above reproach is a big part of your job and officials' jobs. What lengths did you go to make sure that like fans aren't putting the tinfoil hats on, you know, with your name, and making sure that they don't think that you're biased, or like, hey, I'm going to do everything in my power to get this team to the playoff, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'll say this, there's always that fan perception that for in the Big 12, it was Texas and Oklahoma. You guys, like, there's a vested interest to have Texas or Oklahoma win and represent, just like it was Alabama or Georgia in the SEC. I can tell you unequivocally, those conversations never, ever occurred, ever. And they don't occur in the SEC or in the Big 10. It's just absolutely that has nothing to do with officiating. And I can assure you, if anyone ever approached me in that regard, I would have left, because my integrity and my character mean more to me than anything else. And so I can assure you, you can put that to rest. Those conversations are never had at the collegiate level, period.
I know referees sometimes like the color shirts they wear and pack and take to the game.
100%.
And like, what are those types of things?
The first thing that we do is at the beginning of the week is determine what teams do we have and what colors are they, and we dress color neutral. Made sure that we didn't have, if there was green and gold was one team and it was burnt orange and white, whatever, we made sure that our dress attire didn't have either school's colors there. So it's to that level. I can remember a game where we had a timer. We had Texas and Oklahoma, and we were driving from Oklahoma City to Norman. We stopped at a 7-Eleven to get a few things to drink, and one of the timers was there, and he parked his car behind me. So I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and I can see a Longhorn logo on his vehicle. And I got out of that car and I dressed him down. I told him, "You're leaving that vehicle right here. It's not going to the stadium." And I'm just, those kind of things just boggle my mind that someone would be that negligent in thinking that somehow that was okay. So to answer your question, there's a lot of work that goes in, and people ask, one of the common questions is, what's your favorite team? Well, officials don't have a favorite team.
We get that too, Mike. We get that too.
You may have grown up as an official. You may have grown up in a family, and maybe early on you were a fan here or there. But when you become an official, it's like becoming a judge. Your responsibility then is to the law. Okay, it's what the law says. And in officiating, it is, how do we adjudicate the game with the rules and the standards, and to get to the right result regardless. We look at a game as team A and team B. That's what the rule book talks about. Team A's offense, team B's defense. We've got a team that's going to be wearing a colored jersey and a team that's going to be wearing a white jersey. One play at a time, we get to the end. And I don't care how many fouls one team has versus the other. We're not there to be even. We're there to be fair. And some teams play on the edge and they'll foul a little bit more. Some teams are a little more undisciplined and they're going to foul a little bit more. Some people who pay a tremendous amount of attention to that become very good playing teams, and they're penalized the least amount. So you're going to have natural disparities in style of play and their philosophical approach to the game. So I never worried about any of that. The game will take care of itself. We're there to rule on one play at a time. What
is, a lot of fans might think you guys show up at the game and that's it. But you are actually doing a lot throughout the week. What is a typical game week like for an official?
Wow. It is a full week, and it begins at the end of the week that you just got through working. So you travel home on Sunday. You're exhausted from the week. So you travel home on Sunday, and you're likely beginning the process of looking at the game you just worked. You'll start evaluating your own game and looking at things on Sunday and Monday, is to break down your film of that game. The game starts getting graded by our graders Monday and Tuesday. As a coordinator, my goal when my evaluators finish grading the game, I come back behind every single play that drew an evaluation. I look at that play and make sure it was graded correctly, and that the wording of the coaching that goes with that is correct. And so our graders will have green font. My font will be red font, so the officials can go in there and look at it. So my job is to make sure that we're finished with the games on Wednesday night. I want them to be able to know, hey, this is the end of this game. Doesn't mean that there isn't going to be work to be done, right? They've got to go back and look and make sure, hey, we made this call. They don't want this call. It was marginal, whatever. But they start preparation at that point for the coming week. They start scouting the two teams they're getting ready to play. You address the colors. You figure out how you're going to dress. If let's say you've got a game that's 3:30 on Saturday, the requirement for a football official, which is far different from college basketball officials and everything else, is you have to be in town by 5:00 p.m. the day prior to the game. Okay, so we're traveling in on Friday. Friday's pretty much you can almost take that game that day. Maybe a person might be able to work a few hours depending on how close they are to their airport. But they're going to travel that day. They've got to be in town before 5:00. So we usually start our meetings at 5:00 sharp, and we'll have a 2 to 2.5 hour meeting. That meeting will encompass everything from administrative things to travel for the next week. We'll cover, hey, we're coming in here. You've got hotels, you've got rental cars, you've got the restaurant, blah, blah, blah. We'll cover the administrative things. We'll go through film of the previous game, and then we'll look at the scouting report for the two teams that we're getting ready to work. We usually have a 10-question rules test that they usually do just to make sure that we're current with the rule book. So it's a very intense 2.5 hour meeting on Friday. We go to dinner as a crew. We come home, we come back to the hotel, and we try to get a really good night's sleep, get up, have breakfast the next morning with the crew. We usually we need to be at the stadium 3 to 3.5 hours prior to kickoff. So some places you dress in your uniform, some places you go dressed in coat and tie and you dress at the stadium. And then we've got a responsibility to we have to have officials now on the field 90 minutes prior to kickoff. So we've got to be out there policing, even when they're not in uniform. They have to have a jersey out there. We've had some incidents where teams have got into scuffles, and so now we used to be out there 60 minutes. Now we're out there 90 minutes. Okay. And so then we got kickoff. We're going to have a 3.5 hour game. We come back to the locker room. We do post game. We have an observer. We do foul reports. And then we shower and change and travel back to the hotel. We'll go back and look at a lot of film on that evening. You almost never can get out on the day of the game, even if you have 11 o'clock kickoff. By the time you do all the things we've talked about, by the time you travel back to your hotel, you never can get to an airport and get a flight out. So you're always traveling on Sunday morning. So
and you guys pay for your own travel and all that stuff. So I think like it's at the FBS level, like 3,000 to 5,000 a game, but that's doesn't include the expenses you guys have to pay for.
Correct. The one thing when you see, let's say just the A4, if you take $5,000 a game, 20% of that has got to go to the IRS. So you take $1,000 and set that off to the side. You're going to pay for airfare, hotels, meals, rental car, fuel, and all that thing. So you're talking about $1,250 to $1,500. So let's say that's $2,500 off the $5,000. So it's a net $2,500 for the autonomy conferences. For the group of five, which I work, is $3,600 to the IRS. The travel expenses are the same whether you're in the G5 or A4. So you're talking about $1,250 to $1,500. You do the math, you'll find out real quickly that these people are not getting rich. And when you when you talk about all the hours that we spend leading up during the season, we haven't even talked about all the work that goes on outside of the quote unquote off season. The clinics that we go to and the rule study sessions and all the time that's being put in there. So
which you're also paying for yourself. So like it's a lot of hours for not that much pay. You guys are basically doing this because
each
you want to
official
do
will
it.
spend
Yeah.
somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 to go to each camp. Almost every conference has a spring clinic and a summer clinic, and they have to pay to get there. You know, when we get to the summer clinic, we pay for their hotel rooms, things like that. But their travel's on them. We pay for meals, but they're going to spend $1,000 in both of those that come out of the net from the prior year. So when you do that, do the math, you can really look at yourself and say, why would someone want to do that? And well, it's because we love the game. We have a passion for the game, and it's our way of being a part of it. And you're not getting rich by any stretch of the imagination.
You mentioned all the stuff that you guys have as a part of your game day responsibilities. And if there's a controversial call, every now and then there'll be a pool reporter that will ask an official something. Would you like to see officials talk to, well, not the officials, but like the head official, like do a press conference after games?
Mike Leach always wanted that.
Yeah, I've never had a problem with that. The problem is that when you get into the pool reporter, and if you ever read a pool reporter policy, they can ask about judgment, but they can't judge anything that has, a rules interpretation. They can't get into judgment. Okay. Judgment is subjectivity. Okay. We could sit down and I could show you a play, and I can show you holding on a lot of plays. And depending on where that holding occurs, we have standards where if we get a hard sweep to the right side of the field and we get a unless we just take a guy down and it's so blatantly obvious that you can't ignore it, you get a hold on the left side of the line, we're not going to call that. We'd be bogging the game down with 25 penalties a game, and no one wants to see that. Officials, players, coaches, and fans.
That's the classic saying from fans, like, well, there's a holding on every play. Like, maybe there is, but if it's off to the side and doesn't matter, fans, you probably don't want that called.
We don't want that call. Look, the owners of the game, and when I talk about the owners of the game, I'm talking about players and coaches, administrators. When we sit down and talk at our meetings, we own the game. We own this collectively. Okay. I don't just go out there and arbitrarily decide, things like that. We talk as a group, and I try to educate our coaches on why we think this is a foul, why it's not a foul. I don't just tell coaches when I'm giving feedback to coaches throughout the season, they'll send plays in for me to look at. I don't just tell them it's right or it's wrong. I tell them it's right, here's why it's right, or it's wrong, and here's why it's wrong. Try to go through all of those things to make sure that they understand, because we're a little bit like maybe a baseball umpire. We're trying to call the game. We're trying to be consistent. It's your job to adjust to us. As long as we're consistent, if an umpire's calling the ball two inches outside the plate and he's consistently calling it 2 inches outside the plate, it's up to the batter and the hitters to recognize that's what he's calling and adjust, and you can do that. That's all they ever ask for. So in football officiating, we're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to be very consistent in how we approach the game, what we call, what we don't call, and when you get into these, what we call advantage, disadvantage fouls, holding, pass interference, blocks in the back, things like that. Not player safety fouls, not administrative fouls. Every one of those fouls has a two-step process. You see a foul that's a potential foul, then you find the football. Was the foul relevant to the action in or near the football? And then you make a determination. If it is, it's a foul. Put a flag on the ground. If it's not, you make a note of it on your foul report and say, passed on a hold by offensive tackle number 78, well away from the play. And then when we grade it and I go back and look at it, I see that there's a hold and he makes a correct judgment on that. I want to give him that. I will score that as a correct no call because he processed what he saw correctly. Okay. Same thing with pass interference. Let's say we've got a hold on the right side of the field. Very quickly, you got a wide receiver that's grabbed by a defensive back. The deep wing is going to look immediately back to the quarterback. Quarterback's looking to the right side and the ball's already out to a receiver on the right side. It had no bearing on the play. He again will write that up and say, pass on a hold here, using the two-step process, went back to the quarterback. Quarterback had the ball already out to the right side, no bearing on play. we'll grade that correct. So there's just so much that goes into every one of these plays. I think people would be shocked at how much detail an official goes through on every single play to make a decision.
And when missed calls happen or bad calls happen, everybody's kind of been through them. What is that feeling like as an official, either in the moment or later on when you're looking at back and you realize you missed something? How do you feel when that happens?
You feel sick. You just really feel sick that you missed something. It's something that eats at you. I can tell you, my career ended, retired in 2019. I can still remember many more of the things that happened that I wish I would have done differently than I do all the good things that I did. I think that's typical of most officials. Now,
coaches too.
What you have to do is you have to come to grips. There are tough plays that happen out there, and you've got to move on, because what you don't want to be is dwelling on what happened on the previous play and then missing or making it or compounding it with other mistakes. But as all good officials will look at the mistakes that they made and figure out what was the root cause. Was I looking in the wrong direction? Did I transition late? Did I not have proper focus? We all have pre-snap routines. You violated something that allowed us to miss what we had there, and so you got to go back and analyze it and get it fixed.
Replay is something you and I have talked about. I talked about it a lot in the story. It bogs down the game. Some officials say, hey, maybe we rely on this too much. Some coaches say, no, we want it as much as possible. Every sport is kind of going through this. How much replay should there be? As an official, just what's your feeling on it? Do you feel like it's good that we have all this, or do you feel like there's an art to it that's kind of missing? What targeting comes up? Obviously you guys didn't make the targeting rule. It's just you guys have to officiate it. How do you feel about replay and its use as an official?
Well, number one, I love replay. At the end of the day, they're there to try to help us get the game right to the best of their ability. They have defined areas of responsibility that they have. There's a broad term that in the replay manual in Rule 12 that talks about if there's an egregious error, they a little bit broader authority in that area. So getting plays right is all that I care about. It's all I ever cared about as a football official, and it's certainly all I care about as a supervisor. I just want to get those things right. Replay has morphed. It's become much greater. The responsibility in those areas has become much, much more than what it was originally intended. But, oh, by the way, guess what? So does the NFL. The NFL does the same thing. They've now moved into replay assist. I think you'll see the college game do that. We try to do the best we can where we can help the game be right. And look, here's the message that every one of us as coordinators preach to our people. Do not allow replay to be your crutch. Your job is to go out there and officiate the game. Do we have parameters? Yes, we do. For example, as a referee on a quarterback pass fumble winning question, we play fumble. If we don't have positive knowledge that it was in fact a pass, we're going to default and play fumble, and then let replay. If they can come back, because they can go frame by frame by frame and see that guy had actual control when the arm started forward, and he can make that an incomplete pass, for example. So there are defaults out there, but when we have positive knowledge, we want to officiate the game, and then replay can come in and help us correct the things that are correctable. So we've done a pretty good job. Is it intrusive? Yeah, it can be, but when you really look at it in the grand scheme of things, we're averaging about 2 stops a game. That's not that bad. I mean, you're going to have some games that get a lot of attention, and maybe you have some plays. But here's the thing. The criticality of the game or the play at the moment in that game, I have told my replay officials before. I remember vividly having the Oklahoma State game in Oklahoma City and Stillwater, rather. And we had a critical targeting call late in the game. And Walt Anderson was actually on that replay headset. And the first thing I told the replay official is, I don't care how long this takes. is the most critical play in the game, and we have to get this right. So at that point, getting it right supersedes everything else, right? So again, that's what they're there for. We do our best to try to, just like football officials, okay? When we have penalty enforcement, we got a simple offsides or simple false start. We want to be quick in and out of penalty enforcement. Let's go, go, go. But when we have multiple flags, maybe we got 2 fouls on play, and we've got a turnover. It can get complicated. That's where we need to take our time and get it right. Same thing in replay. Okay, there's many of them that are very simple. They can come back and see real quickly that we missed it. This pass was on the ground, and we have what's called an expedited review, and we don't even have to call the referee over to the headset. We can get on there and say, "Hey, the pass is incomplete. You're going to be 2nd down and 10 at the 37-yard line, left hash. Let's go." So it is a very vital piece of what we do. Now, let me tell you what the future holds. I think down the road, you're going to see college football move to a coach challenge model. I think that officiating in college football, we're going to retain certain things that they don't have to challenge, but there's going to be certain things, I think, down the road, and we've got to get them comfortable with it, because that will expedite the game. And here's how the game has changed so much. We always govern things in replay by competitive effect. Well, let me tell you something. Have you ever seen teams go for it more on 4th down than they do today? I have seen offensive teams have a play at 4th and 1 at their own 38, and they're going for it. Okay, so if on 3rd down and 4 or 5, we had a play that was only a couple of yard difference, and we choose, hey, that's not really a competitive effect. Well, now it becomes more a competitive effect, and the coaches will tell you, that is competitive. Because we're likely analytics say we're going to go for it. So I think down the road you'll see the coaches challenge things, because it's going to be incumbent upon them to understand this is a competitive effect, and I want to challenge that, as opposed to leaving it up to me.
Yeah, and I can tell you, like, I've talked to people on the rules committee. I've reported about this the last couple of years. There are people on that committee that want the coach challenge to happen for the sake of game flow and everything else. But the coaches, like, hey, it's not my problem right now. I don't want to have to take that on. So I know they're going to do some things. Some people on the committee told me they're going to do some things this year to kind of track some data to try to give to the coaches to convince them a challenge might be the way to go. So we'll see. I know it's something that people want to do. So as we wrap up here, wanted to have some fun. The nickname Beef Ref, for anybody who's seen Mike, gigantic biceps back in the day, even bigger than Ed Hockley and all that stuff.
The internet loves you.
Yeah, I think the national championship game you did, I think, was Alabama Clemson, was a big one for that attention. Do you remember the first time you heard that nickname, and what did your wife think about it?
Oh man, yeah, it was crazy, because I didn't know what was going on. Obviously, I'm working the game. I don't pay attention to my phone or anything. We get to after the game is over with, and we get in the locker room, and we had a good game. We weren't perfect, but we had a really good game. We felt really good about it, and I picked up my phone, and my phone, I had hundreds of text messages, and one of them was from my daughter, and she's calling. She says, "Call me at home immediately." She didn't come to the game, so this is like, we're in Tampa, right, East Coast, or toward the East Coast, and it's late at home, early morning hours at home. So I called her, because at that time I had a 97 or so year old grandmother, and I was very concerned. I thought the way she came across to me that something.
Yeah, if I'm getting that text, I'm panicking.
So I called her, and I said, "What's going on, baby?" She said, "Hey, I'm getting calls from Good Morning America and all these people, and they want to talk to you, and blah, blah, blah. And what do I tell them?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, girl, I was worried about someone dying, and so it was crazy. It really was. I couldn't tell you when I first heard that name, but I can tell you this: when I flew home the next day and I went to my office had made pictures of all of these things, and they had it on the building, and they had pictures of me with my arms pointing toward my office and all. So they made a big deal. As a matter of fact, they made T-shirts that said, "I work for Mike Defee's Arms," or something to that aspect. I still have that T-shirt that they made for me. So it was really wild. Certainly nothing that I had expected. And that funny story, very next year, I opened up and Kirk Herbstreit's on the field. I forget what game we had. And he came up to me and said, "Hey man, I hope you didn't take too personal all the stuff, the jokes." Cause they were talking about my shirt being a schmedium. And I said, "I want you to understand something, Kirk. I'm not like you. I'm not 6'4". I said, "I'm 5'10". Okay. And I'm 215 pounds. And I said, and I'm very broad through the shoulders, and I do have sizable arms, but I have to wear a double 2X to fit my shoulders. Okay." I said, "You put 2X jersey on a guy that's 5'10", it looks like I'm wearing a dress, a nightgown." I said, "So I have to taper the sides and, shorten." And I said, "I shorten the sleeves." And okay, yeah, I take a little liberty, shorten the sleeves a little bit more, but you got to play to your strengths. I'm not 6'4". So, we had a good laugh about it. Matter of fact, it was at Baylor. Because when we showed up in the locker room at Baylor, they had dumbbells sitting out there for me. Like, here's the deal for you to warm up with, right? Like I lift weights before I go out on the field, and I certainly don't. But
you got to get a good pump in before the cameras turn on, man.
it was funny.
What did you max out at the bench press in your at the most in your prime?
I never got 400. I did 385. My goal was always to be, I wanted to be able to double my weight. And at 198 pounds, I benched 385. And, as you get older, your shoulders just don't, I'm paying the price for all that heavy lifting, by the way. As you get older, your shoulders will remind you about those things. So
yeah. You told me last year you'd retired from bench and now you were getting into swimming, right?
Yeah, well, I'm doing a lot more I've lost a lot of weight. I had gotten up to as much as 230, and so I'm down to 200 now. And so I'm trying to be a little more lean. I'm playing a lot more golf and just trying to, as you get a little bit older, I still want to retain muscle and I still lift. Okay. I'll bench, but I use a Smith machine. I don't do real heavy weight anymore. I just try to be real strict and keep myself in really good shape. And, I ask my officials to be in great shape. And so I feel like it's incumbent upon me to be and lead by example. And so while I don't look like I did the day I worked the national championship game, I'm still in pretty decent shape.
And can you leave us with your favorite coach story, by the way?
Yes.
Favorite coach story. Wow.
Anybody who was good to work with?
Yeah, I have one. I have a lot of them, but I have one in particular I think that's really pretty good. If you go out there and Google me, and you'll find a picture of me and Mark Richt nose to nose, and that was the Capital One Bowl game, and I think it was 2013. So just to put a little context around this, that was the year that Georgia had its best team up until it won the national championship game. Their quarterback was Aaron Murray. And they had lost to Alabama in their championship game. They had the ball down at the Alabama maybe 20 or 15-yard line. They threw the ball incomplete in the end zone to lose. Okay, it was their chance to get to the national championship. Alabama, it was incomplete, and Alabama went. And so Georgia got sent to the Capital One Bowl, which at that time was the best non-BCS bowl there. And they were playing Nebraska. And Nebraska comes out. They're happy to be there. Georgia's a little down from their experience, and Nebraska's taking it to Georgia and early in that game. So, and I can remember it was 4:22 to go in the first quarter. Nebraska's got the ball down on the Georgia 12-yard line. They run an ISO up the middle. They gut Georgia for 12 yards and a touchdown. Well, they snapped the ball when the play clock hit 0. And so Mark Richt was very upset, thought there should have been a delay of game. So anyway, what happens is we kick the extra point, we punch out, go to commercial break, and he's out on the field wanting to talk to me. And Brad Van Vark was my back judge at the time. Brad was an excellent back judge and later became a very good Big 12 referee. He's now a replay official. But anyway, he's trying to explain to Coach about how delay game works, and he's not having it. So I walked past Mark and said, "Hey, Coach, I should be happy to talk to you, but I'm talking to you on the field. Let's talk to the sideline." He wasn't real happy about that. So we get to the sideline, and I said, "Let me explain something to you." I said, we're not Marty Feldman. We're not a chameleon. We don't have one eye on football and one eye on play clock. I said, mechanically, the back judge looks at the play clock. It hits 0. His eyes go straight to the football. If it's on the ground, it's a foul. If it's being snapped, it's not a foul. And he says, "That's not how we do it in the SEC. I said, "Well, Coach, this isn't the SEC." And that lit him up. And so he kind of lunged at me. And so I had three choices at that point. I could have flagged him, I could have walked away, or just belly up and get me some. And I wasn't about to walk away. And I think one of the proudest things of my career is I never flagged a coach in my entire career. I had a lot of candid conversations, but it never hurt the player, it never hurt me, it never hurt the coach. So we bellied up and we had a to-do about that. And so the story goes, fast forward to 2018, he's now the head coach at Miami. And we've got a game, a kickoff classic. I want to say it was LSU, maybe is who they were playing. It was in Jerry World. And so I walk into his locker room. First time I've seen him since then. And he's sitting across the room, and he's got the biggest grin on his face. And I have a grin on my face. And before I get to him, he said, "I think I owe you an apology." And I looked at him and I said, "Coach, you don't owe me anything." I said, the moment that conversation was over with, that conversation and that emotion died right there. I said, if the game's emotional, I understood exactly what you were doing. I had to do what I had to do. We didn't penalize anyone, and we moved on. I said, my only regret is that I had friends that wanted me to take this picture and bring it to you and have you sign it, put it in on a frame. He said, I wish you would have done that and brought two, because I would have put one on my wall too. So, yeah. So
I was going to say,
it'd be a nice piece of memorabilia.
You found it?
I looked it up. I found a great photo. It is a great photo. And Mark Richt, like, one of the nicest guys in college football too. So I'm not surprised your next interaction was like that. So
he was a great guy. And look,
yeah.
it illustrates that the game is emotional. Okay. And as officials, we have to understand that emotion. You have to let water roll off of you, like those comments and everything. It's like water off a duck's back. You have to understand the game's emotional. And if you don't, you have no business doing what we do. Okay. We will take a lot. Okay. You can say a lot of things, just don't make it personal. And I think officials for the most part do a pretty good job of tolerating those things. But there's a tremendous amount, and I have met such wonderful people throughout the course of my career. Mac Brown, Coach Schneider at Kansas State. I'm talking about icons of the game. Worked for Nick Saban. My positive experiences far outweigh the negative experiences in officiating. Even all the stuff that you hear from fans, I don't pay any attention to that anyway. Most officials that are worth their weight don't pay any attention to that. My only fear about that is the fear of safety for our officials, because this country, there are a lot of nuts out there that would go beyond just what is said on a social media platform. So that's the only I have there.
Yeah. And I know it's much worse at the youth level with the parents and stuff like that, because you guys need those officials.
We do.
To do that for 5-10 years to then get up to college football, to then get up into the NFL. And there's been a lot of high school games are being moved or canceled because there aren't enough officials available. So what advice would you give to anybody who's thought about getting into it? Maybe they've been a little bit worried, because I know that's something Mike Pereira runs the battlefields to ball fields to get military veterans into officiating. What advice would you give to anybody who's thought about maybe giving it a shot?
If you love the game and you're passionate about the game as a football person, football officiating is deeply rewarding. It is deeply rewarding. The relationships that you make between the officials and the coaches and players. I've had relationships with players, got to know people, and I wouldn't change my career for anything. And I would highly encourage anyone who has that same passion to jump in, weather the storm. It's called paying your dues. Okay. You got to get through the youth leagues and the JV games and the 9th grade games to get yourself to varsity, and then maybe one day get yourself to college football. And, it's a journey, and where does that journey end? It's magical. And I would highly encourage anyone that is thinking about football officiating to please give it a shot.
Well, Mike, I think that's a great message. Thank you for the time. Thank you for always being open about this stuff. I always find it interesting just learning what you guys do, and we're trying to let fans know what you guys do. Not that they're not going to be upset about a missed call or a bad call, but just to kind of understand the process. I think that just kind of helps everybody involved. So thanks a lot for the time. I'll probably see you at Mountain West media days in a few weeks. Will you be there? I'll see you in
I'll
Vegas.
be at media days. And David, good to meet you, and Chris, always good to see you guys. Appreciate what you do and all the things that you bring to our game. And again, my job is I want to be as transparent and as accountable as I can with what we do. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. And anytime in the future, if something comes up, give me a shout. Happy to talk to you.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Take care, guys.
Great to talk to Mike there. Chris, I think the most striking thing that jumped out to me at the interview is when I asked him about wanting to do a press conference. And he's like, I have no problem with that. I think all these officials know why they do stuff. They would love to defend their decisions and say, well, this is what I saw. This is why I did this. This is why I did that. But I think the leagues know that you might open yourself up to a further examination that they have no desire to. But I think it was interesting that he was very pro, like, I'd love to do a post-game press conference for a head official and talk about it. I think fans would like that. I don't think that anything that they would say would satisfy them at the end, but I'd be interested to have it.
So, like, the NBA has the 2-minute report now,
the last 2-minute report, yeah.
Where they will go over every call and if it was good or not. That's a remarkable amount of transparency. And NBA fans are at the point where, like, they know every referee. You know, Scott Foster has a bad reputation when he's doing the NBA finals.
The extender.
But in Stuart Mandel, who helped me out on this story we wrote, we asked pretty much everybody, like, why don't you do that? Why don't you name officials when somebody gets something wrong? And they feel, which they used to, by the way. Mike Slive, like, fired some crews who got some things wrong and they named the officials and whatnot. But the feeling is that public shaming, they think, will not help, and they think it could lead to some crazy fans doing some stuff, and so they worry about that. The pool reporter thing. So the college football playoff has a policy of a pool reporter can talk to the head official. So, like, somebody could have talked to the head official after Arizona State, Texas about the targeting call. Problem was nobody put in the request. That was it, because I talked to the Big 12 and people involved after that game. Nobody requested it, probably because that game went to double overtime and was crazy on its own. But I was at Texas, Georgia, and stuff's being thrown on the field, and the officials get together and reverse the pass interference that they had called, instead giving Texas an interception. And at that moment, I go to Bianco, the Texas SID, and I go, hey, what's the pool reporter situation? Can I put in questions for the referee or something like that? And nobody really quite knew what the policy was. No conferences, I believe, make the head official available.
Yeah.
What they will do is sometimes take some questions to the
you submit like 2 questions on a piece of paper, and then you get like 2 sentences back.
Yeah, so I put a couple questions in to Texas. They send them to the SEC. The SEC then put out a statement, but it wasn't a very detailed statement, and so I don't think that helped. And Kirby Smart said after the game, he was like, I'm worried about the precedent this is going to set for fans throwing garbage on the field. And he was right, because then we had garbage stoppages at Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, all in the next few weeks. So everybody would like to see more transparency from them. I think a lot of referees would too. But I hope people came away from that interview with at least kind of a better understanding, or at least kind of looking at it as a human way. I found it interesting.
I think it's hard for people because everything has to be so monotone, straightforward. Like, these are things officials wear. I do think, because there's no name on their jersey and they're always very like, here's a wall here. I think people have trouble seeing them as like human beings, of like, hey, that ref has like a wife and 2 kids and a day job and all of these other things. I think people, like, if you have a tough time seeing that sometimes with a freshman quarterback that throws a pick that costs you money that you lost your bet or whatever, I think people really have a hard time seeing officials as fully human, as crazy as that sounds. But I think they're just like, well, that's the ref, and I paid my money, so I get to scream all kinds of like horrific stuff at him. I think there is something to that.
So that was interesting. Read the full story again, linked in the show notes. But appreciate Mike coming on. Had a good time with that. I hope you guys learned as well. So before we get out of here, we got to end the show with the segment called Remember some guys.
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
And this is a segment where we name an old college football player and we go, hey, remember that guy? I'm going to go with TJ Duckett, Michigan State running back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Big running back who looked like a defensive lineman back in the day. He was 6 foot, 241 pounds, made a lot of catches out of the backfield as well. Caught the game-winning touchdown against Michigan in 2001, where, speaking of referees and timers, there was 1 second left on the clock, giving Michigan State one more play, which led to a great call from the Michigan radio broadcast, which I've been waiting to use as one of the drops, but I've got it here.
Jim, this game was stolen from the Michigan Wolverines.
That actually led to changing how timers work in games, but went on to the NFL. Him and Warwick Dunn were a good team. But yeah, man, those big, bruising 240-pound running backs, we don't have those anymore. You did Jaworski Lane a few weeks ago on the show, but in Big Ten country, that was Ron Dane and that was TJ Duckett.
For my guy, Chris, I've always been drawn to the diminutive athlete who plays bigger than he is. When I was a kid, I youngest years, I grew up on the NBA. So like Muggsy Bogues, Spud Webb. I always loved those guys. And you know who else I fell in love with was the 5'6" Jaquiz Rogers of Oregon State fame. Most known for the Thursday night upset of USC. I watched that. I was out with some friends in college when I saw that game. It was fantastic. Huge upset. We get the Mark Sanchez mouthpiece throw. Didn't that hit someone? I forget. Anyway, maybe. Anyway, super fun guy. And you just couldn't really see him. And he seemed to do things that were impossible. And when he got hot, it just felt like nobody could ever hit him square. He's just bouncing off of people, fitting into holes, ducking behind offensive linemen. Jaquiz Rogers, that dude. Loved him. Shout out to the Beavers, Oregon State, a Pac-12 legend. Well, Pac-10 legend, I guess. But Jaquiz, I remember that guy.
Loved him. We got a big running back. We got a small running back. That's what we love about college football. You can get the strangest of combinations of players, and it works out. So that's going to do it here at Bunch Formation. Again, please subscribe. Give us a 5-star review. bunchformationpod@gmail.com. And we will be back next week with a new show. And this was fun. So for David Ubben, I'm Chris Vannini. We will talk to you guys next week. See you.
And please bring back the turnover chain.